Hey everyone, welcome back to Kubrick Corner with me, Sean Wilson. So last night I got to go to a special UK preview screening of Incredibles 2, which isn't officially out over here yet owing to the World Cup. It's not actually out until the 13th of July, but I went to the Cineworld secret screenings that they host every so often in which it's not revealed beforehand, as the name implies, what the film is going to be. People only find out when the BBFC certificate comes up at the start of the movie, and it's intentionally out of focus, and then the certificate is brought into focus, revealing what the film is. And the reaction in the audience, I think, speaks for a lot of people who've already seen this film in America. There were lots of cheers, lots and lots of goodwill, owing to the fact that we've been waiting 14 years for this movie. It's hard to believe that it was December 2004 that Brad Bird's first Incredibles movie came out and really took the world by storm. It took that Fantastic Four idea of the dysfunctional family who just so happen to be superheroes, and how do they wrestle the idea of their superpowers with their various roles. So you've got Helen and Bob, who are the Elastigirl and Mr. Incredible, the mother and father respectively. Then you've got Dash and Violet, the children. Then you've got Jack the infant. And it was a wonderful idea, done in that usual Brad Bird's retro James Bond pastiche style, with lots of chrome surfaces, lots of lovely jazzy score by Michael Giacchino, and all of those elements are very much in place in this sequel as well. So we pick up directly where the first one left off. When, if you remember, at the end of the first one, we had the presence of the villain called the Underminer, and it left you on a real cliffhanger, knowing that the Incredibles were going to launch into their next sort of mission, and then it left you hanging. This one picks up with this incredible, brilliantly animated sort of large scale action set piece full of destruction and all sorts of stuff going on. And it really shows you how the animation in Pixar movies has come on leaps and bounds since 2004, which is saying an awful lot given how brilliantly animated the first Incredibles was. But then what happens is, at the point at which the Incredible family foil the Underminer at the start of this movie, superheroes are technically still illegal as per the events of the first movie. They haven't yet been legalised. But what then happens is a rather shady character voiced by Better Call Saul's Bob Odenkirk wants to bring superheroes back into the spotlight and wants to initiate this new superhero PR scheme. And rather than asking Bob to be the face of it, he asks Helen to be the face of it instead. So she goes out and solves lots and lots of crime fighting missions, and is basically there to put a positive slant on the idea of the superhero, whereas Bob is left at home sort of carrying the baby, like literally and figuratively. It's his job to look after the children. And one of the great things that the film does, which is indicative of the culture we live in now, although obviously this film has probably been in development for several years now, but no doubt this film, when Brad Bird was writing this film, he was no doubt anticipating the trends of gender parity and gender equality, which are very much at the forefront in the movie. And that's a well played it's a well played joke, and it's also got a nice message for the audience, which is that that genders can be flipped, and that it's not always the role of the father to go out and play the hero. And there's also this nicely sort of subversive streak as well, which there is a suggestion that Bob is, as the man, letting Helen go out and be the superhero, and there is this all this playing with these patriarchal traditions and male female relationships. In truth, though, that makes the film sound a lot heavier than it is, because really it is just a great big load of fun. Although there is that intelligent underpinning, as there is in Brad Bird's other movies, mainly this is just a fun romp that's really brilliantly animated and whips along at a fair old pace. What you get as the story unfolds is there's this new villain called the Screenslaver who hypnotises people through TV sets, and you know that there is a great big battle coming round. But the real joy of the movie resides, I think, in the domestic sequences, particularly with the character of Jack, who, let's not forget, whose powers were only teased at the very end of the first Incredibles movie, where he helped see off the villain syndrome. Whereas in this movie, all of the family start to become aware of what his abilities are, and he has loads of them. I think I've seen online that he's got about 17. Well, it's hard to keep count in the film because there are so many, but they include the ability to multiply himself, the ability to fire lasers from his eyes, the ability to turn into a little pink rage monster when he doesn't get his own way, and that aspect of the plot, I have to say, is the best part of the film. It's very, very funny. There is a proper Tex Avery style slapstick sequence midway through in which he engages in a scrap with a raccoon that's been feeding through the bins outside the house in which they live in. Also, one of the other gags in the film is that they're moved from the temporary accommodation that resulted in the destruction of the house at the end of the previous movie, and now they've been moved into a much more lavish pad. But either way, that's incidental. Jack fights a raccoon, and there follows this 5 minute sequence which is just brilliantly animated and brilliantly slapstick, and it's character building as well. It teaches you a lot about Jack's character. Despite the fact that he's just an infant, he steals the show immediately, and that running gag becomes very, very funny throughout the remainder of the film. I have to say, I don't think there's as much depth in this one as there was in the first movie, because I remember when I watched the first Incredibles, and it took me a while to sort of get my head around it. It wasn't an immediate win for me. The first Incredibles, it was quite strange in places. It had that mixture of, as I said, like James Bond heroics and superhero style, with that, satirical midlife crisis angle, which was that Bob going around his insurance job. And I think that was probably a harder sell for me as a 17-year-old when the original Incredibles came out, although I've subsequently come to appreciate the film's subtle humour a lot more as I've got older. Whereas I think what this one does, this one kind of forgoes most of the subtlety, again, barring the sort of gender politics thing, which is relatively underplayed. This one forgoes the subtlety, and it just basically launches lots of very, very fast-paced action, lots of jokes, lots of really sort of brilliantly orchestrated like set pieces that just escalate in intensity the further they go on. Yeah, I mean, beautifully voiced as before by Craig T. Nelson and Holly Hunter. As I said, Bob Odenkirk is back in this. Catherine Keener is another voice in it as well. Michael Giacchino's score continues with those saxophone jazzy riffs that play off John Barry's James Bond scores and any other number of classic influences. And yeah, I really, really liked it. I think, as I said, to take it back to the start of the review, I think the fact that people were cheering when the BBFC certificate, British Board of Film Classification certificate, came up at the beginning shows what a wellspring of nostalgia this film is going to tap into. As I said, it's out in the UK on the 13th of July. If you happen to live outside of the UK and you've already seen Incredibles 2, drop me a message here at Kubrick Corner with your thoughts. Until then, see you soon.